Alright, so in this pan we have our onions, carrots, and celery rough chopped up to about half an inch or less. And I have three pieces of chicken breast that I bought from my local butcher for 99 cents a pound. This is going to go into the oven the way it is at 350 degrees for roughly an hour. That way I can roast it up for an amber stock. Now over here in this pan or pot, I'm going to put in the rest of my bones, and I'm going to show you how to do the clear or white stock method as well. To blanch these off, we're going to put some cold water in. Then we're going to bring this to a boil, discard the water, and start over. And the reason that we're doing this is because it's going to allow us to boil off some of the proteins that we don't want and the blood. So this is going to end up being a scummy water, and it's going to look almost like your sink when we're done. So we'll get this on the stove, turn this on, and then we're going to get the pot or the pan into the oven. Okay, so about 5-6 minutes have passed, and now my water has come to a rapid boil. Now in the first segment, I was a little excited to be making this video, and I forgot to chop the bones up, so I threw them in as a whole carcass. After I realized what I did, I took them out and I cut it into 3. So now you can see that there's a bit of fat at the top, and you can see right here the scum that's left on the side of the pot from the boil. Before it started to boil, just as it got to its rapid simmer, the entire top of the water was covered in a layer of that. And what that is that's blood proteins that have coagulated. So now we're going to discard all of this water. It's going to go down the drain. We're going to grab a clean rag, and we're going to wipe off that scum, or we could change to a new pot. We're going to replace the bones. Back to our work surface here. I have more onions, carrots, and celery cut up, plus water. This is fresh, cold, clean water. This is going to go on our stove for 2 to 3 hours for a chicken stock. We'll bring it to a rapid boil, and then we'll put it on for a simmer. Now, a lot of recipes are going to tell you that you should be putting some type of herbs in here. And normally what you would do is you would take your herbs and you would wrap them into a little baggie made of cheesecloth. You could put that in there for up to the first 45 minutes, and then it goes bitter. So that's why it's wrapped in cheesecloth. That way you can remove it. However, I find you get just about the same results by adding the herbs in at the last 45 minutes and straining it out with the vegetables and bones. So I've just put this on to a high heat. Once this reaches its boil, I'll turn it down to a simmer. The important thing is to make sure that the bones always stay underwater. So it's okay for the water to reduce, but once the bones become exposed, just like we have here, you need to top it up with a little bit more water. So I'm going to top it up while it starts to a boil, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, now as we can see, the stock has come to a rapid boil. I'm going to turn the front burner off, turn the back burner on, and we're going to slide this to the back of the stove so it's out of my way for the rest of the night. I'll turn it down so I have a simmer, and periodically throughout the night I'll come by with a ladle and I'll skim. So what you do is you put the ladle in so the ladle is out of the water enough that nothing pours into it, and when you stir, your centrifugal force will push the fat out to the edges. Then you can skim it up if there is any. We haven't developed quite enough yet for it to be worth my time to do it, but I wanted to show you that's how it would be done. It's important to skim it if you're going to be using it the same day. If you're going to be using this tomorrow, then you can put it in the fridge, and overnight the fat will separate and float to the top. Then you can just take it off. You can throw it out, or you can use it as part of your fat in a roux if you're going to make a thickened sauce or thickened soup from the stock. And actually, I do have enough, so I'll give this a little bit of a push out, And then right up here, I'll skim it. And the classic term for this is deglacier. I'll let this go for 2 to 3 hours now that it's on the back of the stove on a simmer. So roughly 45 minutes have elapsed, and I've taken my bones out of the oven. You can see that they've developed color, and that's the point of the amber stock. Everything's roasted and developed color. The roasting also acts in the same manner as the blanching that we did on the white stock, where it cooks off the impurities that are going to be found. So now I can put this in my pot, and the procedure is basically going to be the same. I'm going to add cold, clean, fresh water to the pot, making sure that I cover the bones. I'm going to put it on the stove for 2 to 3 hours. I'm going to put it on for a rapid boil and then drop it down to a simmer. Once it boils, I'm going to make sure that I skim it every so often, exactly like I just shown you for the clear stock. So if you are going to skim your stock, there's one trick you can do to avoid all the to avoid a lot of the work involved in it, is put your pot half on the burner, half off the burner. And what this will do is the heat coming up on the right side will push all of the fat to the left. So instead of running the ladle around, all you have to do is go over the left side of the pot. And I'm going to top this up with a bit more water because the bones are starting to pop up through. Okay, so I roughly have about 45 minutes left in the cooking process. And like I said earlier before, you can put your herbs in at the start and pull them out after about 45 minutes. Or what I like to do is just throw them in at the end so they can be sprinkled in and scattered around. And then just strain them out with everything else. Just mix them in, and you can see the color that we've developed is a very clear, crisp color. When we look at the amber stock, we'll just give that a little bit of a mix. You can see how much more darker it is. Now, another thing with throwing herbs in, and if you're making about it, is if you're making stocks because you just love cooking and you love everything to be super rich and flavorful and homemade, by all means, put whatever herbs in it you want. But if you're making stocks to save money, and it's the middle of January, and they're charging $3.99 for a bunch of parsley at the grocery store, don't bother with it, because you're going to spend more money on the parsley than what you're saving in the stock. So these are the two, and I just moved this over because we just finished dinner, so I can put these up front now. Let me just turn this down a bit more. And I'm going to let them go for about another half an hour before I strain them. Alright, so it's been about 40 minutes since I threw in the fresh herbs, and I'm going to call these done. So we're going to shut them off. I have my white one here and my amber here. They're both chicken stocks. What you guys missed on the what you guys missed while I was recording this was we got busy and I wasn't able to show you deglazing the pan that I roasted the chicken and vegetables in. So just to recap, in the white stock, we put our bones in cold water, brought it to a boil, discarded the water, added onions, carrots, and celery, which we also call a mirepoix, added fresh water up to the top of the bones, brought it to a boil, and then simmered for 3 hours. For the amber stock, we put our bones and mirepoix in a roasting pan. We roasted them up for 40 minutes to develop extra rich color. Then we repeated basically the same steps as the white stock. We put it into a pot, added water, brought it to a boil, and then reduced that boil down to a simmer. We deglazed the stock pot, or the roasting pan, and added that into here. And you can see, if I grab some out, the color. and the lack of color here. Both serve different uses, but we prefer to use this one here. And I'm going to strain them off now. And you can also save the bones for a secondary stock called a remaniage. Basically what you would do is you would put the bones back into a pot with a fresh supply of vegetables, and then go through the stock process all over again. Now with that secondary stock, you would not use that directly for cooking. You would use that in place of water next time you make a stock. Alright, now that we have them strained out into these two pails, the next step would be to then pour these into shallow pans, so that way they can cool off in the fridge overnight. Or, which is what I'm going to do because I'm going to go home. Or what you could do is you could take this and put it into the sink. You put the whole bucket in the sink, sitting on bricks, and then run cold water around it. So that way the water can circulate around it, and the bricks so it can circulate underneath it, and then you take a spoon and stir it up, and that would let you cool it off faster, so you could put it right into the fridge in the bucket. You can see the finished color, and I didn't really skim them that much because I'm gonna put them in the fridge and we can just peel the fat off tomorrow. My plan is to freeze this one and use it as a chicken stock. My plan for this one, when I come in tomorrow, is to put it back on the stove and reduce it down to the glass stage, and I will show you that. I will show you that in this video. So this is the white stock that I made previously. You can see that it's got a little bit of fat on it, and it's moves easy in the pan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce it by about 2/3, give or take, and I'm going to the glacier stage, or just glass if you want. What I'm going to end up with is basically like a loose jello that I can then pour into ice cube trays and freeze. The idea behind that is anytime I need a little bit of extra flavor, then I can just pop an ice cube of glass out and throw it into anything I'm making. So I've let this reduce for 90 minutes, and I now have 1/4 of my original liquid left. Now this should gel up nice into the glacier, or glass. Put it into some ice cube trays and freeze it, and then you can pull an ice cube worth out at a time and throw it in anything you're making for some instant flavor boost. So I started out with 4 liters of water when I made the white stock, and I reduced it down to the glass, or glacier, and this is how much I have left. Now this is going to have the concentrated flavor of probably 3.5 liters worth of stock. I'm going to say 3.5 because probably have a ½ liter boil off during the simmering process. So this is the glass that I have left. Basically you can put it into some ice cube trays, freeze it up, and then whenever you need instant flavor, and this is extremely powerful, then you can toss those into whatever you make.